I am a hiring manager at a tech company and I was hiring for summer internships a little while ago. We had a guy, about 19 years old, applying for a summer internship between his freshman and sophomore years of college. It was a virtual interview over Zoom because of COVID. A minute or two in, when I was introducing myself, his mom came in and introduced herself and started talking about her son's work ethic. I thought it was a little strange. I said something polite about wanting to hear from him. She just didn't get the hint and kept coming into camera frame during the interview and interrupting her son to answer questions for him. I asked a few technical questions which he seemed to answer well and then cut the interview fairly short. I thought that was all over and done with until I'd gotten an email from a woman, a month later, asking about her son's application. She seemed offended he hadn't gotten an acceptance or rejection. It bothered me. I felt bad for the kid honestly. Way back when I was a teenager, my mom used to pull the same shit. But luckily she only did that when I was 15 and working for a day camp. Not when I was an adult applying for engineering jobs. But I felt like this poor kid was getting his chances ruined because his mom wasn't giving him the chance to apply on his own. I sent an email back saying I was not at liberty to send information about an application to anybody but the applicant. I also asked HR to send an email to the kid saying sorry, but we were not making him an offer. It is something we usually do, but his rejection email must have slipped through the cracks with all the COVID craziness. Anyway, after we sent that, I got a phone call from his mom. She had a forwarded copy of the email, and she was demanding answers. I said that I could not comment on the guy's performance in the interview to her as she was not the applicant. If he wanted to reach out to me, I was happy to give him some feedback. However, I could say that regardless of his performance, her presence in the interview took him out of consideration for the position. We were looking for an independent and self-driven person for the position, and for that reason, it is important to see an applicant speak for themselves, follow up themselves, etc. I also said that, as a piece of advice, every hiring manager I've met in my career who sees someone other than the applicant answering questions during an interview, following up on the applicant's behalf, etc., would also put their resume in the "do not hire" pile. Since, while the applicant may be skilled and motivated, they need the ability to demonstrate those traits themselves. She blew up at me over that, kinda cussing me out to the point where I hung up. I have always been civil with my half-brother. We were close as kids, but he started to have an attitude at 13 and pretty much stopped being nice, and started messing with my things / making fun of me and doing pranks to annoy me / privacy, was gone with him coming into my room and taking my things. Whenever I complained, my stepmom would normalize his behavior and make excuses. My dad never really grounded him and thought that talking to him will get him to behave better. I'm currently in college. I live in a rented apartment and have car to help me get to the university or other places. The car isn't expensive or fancy at all. I saved up for it 2 years ago. I decided to have Christmas dinner with my family. It's the perfect opportunity to be with family since I haven't seen my dad in a while. I arrived at my dad's house and left my purse and my keys on the kitchen island after my stepmom told me to help with dinner. My half-brother started talking about my car in the kitchen while my stepmom was listening and asked if he could take it for a couple of hours to hang out with friends. I politely told him no. He threw a fit and brought up how I needed to relax and not worry, but my answer was still the same. While we were sitting at the dinner table, my half-brother got up, washed his hands, and I thought he went outside. I got busy talking to my dad, and after I got up to wash my hands, I noticed my car keys weren't there. I went outside to ask him, and neither he nor my car were there. I lost it. I started calling his phone, but he hung up on me several times. I was furious. I told my dad I'd call the police if he didn't come back with the car. My stepmom jumped to defend him and said I was being unreasonable to call the police. I called him one last time, then I called the police. My stepmom freaked out when my half-brother got picked up by the police. She told me to go explain the situation to the authorities, otherwise he'd spend the night in jail. But I refused, especially since I still hadn't got my car back. Stepmom yelled that I ruined dinner and that it was no big deal. He was going to return it after borrowing it from me, but he didn't really borrow it, and she heard me say no. I don't know what she told the police, but I didn't give permission to use the car. My stepmom's side of family are mad at me for doing this to my brother and hinted that I don't consider him family. My dad's side of family sided with me, saying he deserved it. My dad said I overreacted and I shouldn't have called the police when he disappeared for 4 hours. I talked to the police about what happened, and I learned later that my stepmom said that her son was allowed to borrow it, and that it was a misunderstanding. I wasn't going to let her continue to lie, but my dad told me to back off and let it go. This really upset me. My half-brother wasn't even berated the way I was by the family. Me and my girlfriend have never fought. We get along fine. We have been living together for 9 years now, and have been dating for 12 years. We have a healthy sex life. We both have decent jobs that bring in decent money. In the past we talked about marriage a lot and would often joke about what our wedding would be like. Yes, I know how stupidly lame this sounds, however we always agreed we needed to settle down first. We bought a house about a year and a half ago, and were finally able to settle down. Our work schedules normalized, we were able to remove a huge waste of time from commuting. And we were finally able to take various activities after work, e.g., dancing classes, cooking classes, etc. We were able to finally settle down. Finally we decided to take a week off and unplug on the week of 12-year anniversary. She wanted to go camping and hiking, and do the things we used to do when we were first dating. Unbeknownst to her, I secretly decided to pick the exact same area where we met to do our hiking/camping trip. 2 weeks ago, as we are leaving, she realizes where we are going and becomes ecstatic, and gushes about how romantic I am. More or less everything seems perfect. We do our hike, and we unpack, set up, and by sundown everything feels perfect. So I decided to pop the question. This is where everything kind of falls apart. I ask her, and she just says no. We literally went from I love yous to the single most awkward silence I have ever had in my life in the time span of about a minute. We sat there kind of not saying anything before she says she is tired and goes to bed. She basically proceeds to cry herself to sleep while I sat there doing nothing. I basically didn't sleep, and the next morning, she says she wants to go home. So we pack up and have a really awkward 3-hour hike back to our car. There were a few times where things kind of felt normal and we were joking around like we used to be for a bit. On the way back home, we are talking and chatting normally, but it just feels awkward. At one point we stopped for coffee, and asked if she wanted to talk about what happened, and all I got was a curt no. This is followed by another extremely long silence for the rest of the drive home. We finally get home and I unpack everything while she goes off to bed. She is going to bed. Cue more crying. I tried really hard to talk to her, but she pretty much told me that she just needs time to be alone and think. The next day she tells me she is going to take some time and see her family, which is literally on the other side of the country. It has been about 2 weeks since I dropped her off at the airport. She sent me a few messages to tell me she is fine, and that she needs some more time to think. Her best friend has been asking me every other day about what is going on with her, since she hasn't really been responding at all. I know she is okay, though, due to her posting some pictures of her and her family on Instagram. But it just feels really weird. I am an absolute giant mess. I just don't quite understand what is going on. None of my friends have really offered me anything of value. I just feel if I didn't ask the question everything would be absolutely fine, and I don't really understand what is going on. I keep wanting to grab her laptop to try and figure out anything. I am not close to her parents at all, but I trust her and want to respect her space, but I don't know when she is coming back. I even sent her a message this morning, and I know she saw the message and received it, but hasn't replied. Also, her work has called me this morning asking about where she is. Apparently she had taken an extra week off last week, but she was supposed to be in yesterday. Now everything feels like it is falling apart and I have no idea what to do. The reason why it took so long for us to get married is we both agreed we wouldn't move to the next step until we finished the following. We both finished school. For her that wasn't until 2 years ago. We both had stable jobs. We had a place where we could agree would be good enough to take stuff to the next step. We both had decent working hours. For a long time she was doing her residency and we more or less worked opposite shifts. We did talk about marriage and kids, and both agreed it would be part of the next step after we got settled. When I was 19 and a sophomore in college, I had a boyfriend I thought I really loved. Looking back, maybe it was just teenage puppy love infatuation. Not sure, but I guess it's not important. I know I'm very biased and what I want is what's best for my daughter, but I think my feelings are getting in the way of that. I had been with Tom for about 8 months at that point. He was on the baseball team and very popular. But one day I discovered I was pregnant and told Tom. He freaked out and got super pissed. He demanded I get an abortion, said he would not stay with me otherwise. He did offer to pay the full expenses of it though. So I went to the clinic and I couldn't do it. I'm very pro-choice and told myself the logical thing to do would be to have an abortion. But when it came down to it, I just couldn't do it. I admit part of it was that I was afraid, but I also felt an attachment for my baby. The thought of getting rid of him / her made me feel like throwing up. So I told Tom that I did love him and I wasn't trying to trap him, but I simply couldn't have an abortion. Maybe we could look into adoption, but abortion was out. Tom said he had never loved me, and while I was fun, I was now causing him too much trouble for him to bother with me anymore. And I was right, I wasn't going to trap him. He said I was free to choose to keep the baby, and he was free to choose to have nothing to do with me or it and to not even think of trying to get child support from him. I won't go into details, but Tom made it clear he would make life as miserable as possible for me if I tried to contact him again, get child support, etc. Maybe it was wrong to do, but I figured all that trouble and drama just wasn't worth it and I would make my own way. I was, however, devastated and completely heartbroken. I admit it really me up. I never spoke with or saw Tom again. I did consider adoption, but in the end, long story short, I chose to keep my child. Faith is 4 now. It's been a long and hard road, but I graduated college and got a job. We live in a tiny apartment and finances are tight, but we make do. I love Faith like crazy and I do not regret the choice to keep her whatsoever. She makes me a better person and we have a good life. However, 3 days ago I received a letter in the mail. It was from Tom. Inside the envelope was a letter and a check for $3,000. This is what the letter said: Vika, I know this is coming out of nowhere and I'm sorry, but I didn't know a better way to do this. I am so sorry for how I acted 5 years ago. I was selfish and a complete fool. I know that doesn't begin to cover it. These past 5 years have really had an effect on me. I got a job at Restraint. I started hanging out with different people. Good people instead of college jocks. I know I ran from my responsibility and I treated you with callous cruelty. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to make it right. Here is a check for $3,000 for Faith. I know that doesn't begin to cover what her expenditures have been, but I wanted to show I am serious about what I'm about to say. I want to be a part of our daughter's life. I will go as slow as you like. I would very much like to set up regular child support payments as well as pay off whatever back child support I owe you for the past 5 years, including hospital appointments during your pregnancy. I know I don't deserve it, but I want to meet my daughter and be a part of her life in whatever way I can. I want to help her and I want to help you and start making up for the terrible way I acted. Here is my contact information. I am willing to do what you ask of me. Thank you for your time. Tom. I was blown away. I'm also beyond pissed off. I'm thinking of the pregnancy I had to deal with after getting dumped like that. Exams and papers I had to write. Giving birth to her on my own. The late night feedings, all the diaper changes, the constant crying. Trying to afford clothes to keep Faith warm during the winter as she grew while also making sure she didn't go hungry, the tantrums. The first steps, first words, the potty training. He wasn't there for any of that, and now he just wants to come waltzing into her life like nothing happened. After doing whatever he felt like now that Faith is out of the unfunny baby years and she's a well-behaved child who can now carry on a conversation, and knows how to use toilet and doesn't wake up every 2 hours. Faith has started asking questions like, where is her daddy? How come she doesn't have a daddy? And I've been doing my best. I've been saying mommy doesn't know where daddy is, true until now. And she doesn't have a father because daddy wasn't ready to be one when she was born. Maybe that's the wrong answer, but I am doing my absolute best. I'm thinking of how Tom hurt me and bailed when life got hard. I can't stand the thought of him doing that to Faith. She's a sweetheart and quite sensitive. She doesn't understand unkindness. She makes friends with everyone and is very innocent. I've done my best to teach her to be a calm, kind, respectful person, and everyone loves her. However, I do know she needs a good male role model in her life, and I do feel guilty for not having one for her. I haven't had a boyfriend or dated since Tom because all my energy and focus has been on graduating college, getting a job, and being a good mother to my daughter. I never really thought about Tom much after Faith was born, but now that I am with this intrusion into our lives, I think I hate and despise him. I want him to just go away. I wanted to not even cash the check and to tell him to take his money and shove it, but my parents and close friends reminded me that that is Faith's money and she is entitled to it, and I agree. At minimum, I want to get some child support going because Faith deserves all the financial assistance and opportunities she can get. However, I know if I get regular child support, Tom will want to be in Faith's life, and frankly, I don't want that. I don't want him to hurt her and bail when life gets hard, because it is when you have a kid. I also feel like he doesn't deserve her. 4-year-olds are a lot more fun than infants. How convenient he suddenly shows up and wants to be a dad when the hardest part is out of the way. But I honestly do want what's best for Faith. I think she deserves to have a good daddy. I just don't think Tom is. I think Faith is better off having no dad than a bad or half-assed one. She deserves the money. But am I right to take the money and not give Tom any access to my daughter? I can't stand the thought of him hurting her. The thought of dropping her off at his house where I don't have access to her makes me want to scream and run away. Am I out of line for taking Tom's money but saying that's as close as he will ever get to her? I am not convinced in the slightest he has changed. I feel like this is guilt money and I want to throw that check in the trash. But it's Faith's money, not mine. Faith and I have a good life, and I feel like Tom is going to ruin that. But is it right to keep Faith from her biological parent when he has sent the money? I hate feeling like I owe her him because of that. P.S. College boyfriend dumped me after I got pregnant and threatened to ruin my life if I tried to talk to or get child support from him. Almost 5 years later, I get a $3,000 check in the mail and a letter apologizing for what he did and saying he wants to be a dad. I want to tell him to stay the hell away from us, but I want what's best for my child. Tom is listed as the father on the birth certificate.